All right, thank you very much. All right, I think everybody can hear me. So hello, everyone. My name is Greg Schultz, and I'm Marketing and Creative Director at Instantiations. Welcome to my mini session, Realigning a Brand to Improve Marketing. I could be wrong, but I don't think presentations about marketing or design are frequently seen at small talk related events, so I'll do my best to keep things interesting. I think that anyone can benefit from having more knowledge about brands and marketing, though. So regardless of their role in a company, I'm glad of your role in a company or your role in general. I'm glad that you're here. So as you've seen, Instantiations has rebranded itself recently. The most obvious part of our rebranding was the visual aspect, which I'll go into some details on, but I'd like to discuss a few other facets as well. Now, I want to ensure we have some common points of reference. So I'll clarify any common misconceptions surrounding the words marketing or brand. And then we'll talk about how a good brand can improve the ability to market your products or services. And then we'll highlight why we rebranded Instantiation specifically, and at what point generally is a rebrand necessary. After that, we'll do a quick review of Instantiation's logos and visual identities over the years. I figure that will be more fun than comparing paragraph after paragraph of website text that we chose to rewrite, for sure. So, and then afterward, we'll have a question and answer session like we did with Seth's session just now. So let's get started. So what is marketing first? And this is easy, but just to make sure everybody's on the same page, most basically, marketing can be defined as any action whose goal is to lead to a sale of a product or service. So anything you do that can lead to a sale of a product or service. So things like social posts and advertisements qualify as marketing, of course, but almost anything could be considered marketing to some degree. And as far as brands go, what is a brand really? And I bring this up because there's a common misconception out there, even amongst brands or amongst the word brand, that even graphic designers and marketers don't get right sometimes. They think that a brand is a logo, a brand is a color palette, it's a writing style, or it's a website, or it's a combination of all those things. And sure, updating these elements can improve a brand, and updates are important for maintaining a brand, which is why businesses, Instantiations included, make changes over time. However, a brand itself is more than the sum of these parts. In reality, a brand is simply the perception of a business to customers and non-customers alike. It's all about perception. Interestingly, that means that a company can influence their brand by updating their logo or creating a new website, sometimes with great success. But a company can only improve their brand as much as they can control how people perceive it. So essentially, everything a company does influences and shapes their brand. To quote CEO Michael Eisner, former CEO of Disney, a brand is a living entity, and it is enriched or undermined cumulatively over time, the product of 1,000 small gestures. This is especially true for companies like Instantiations that rely frequently on customer interactions to do business, either through support or some other type of custom development and consulting. Branding includes our interactions with customers at events, forum posts, and even follow-up emails. Again, everything a company does can ultimately impact the brand. And from a broad perspective, even public relations, software development, technical support, and graphic design may be considered marketing because, and it's demonstrably true, that all these disciplines are responsible for improving the brands of various companies. So as you can probably guess, if a brand is based upon the perceptions and many things can influence these perceptions, then a brand will constantly evolve over time. So why should a company go through all this effort of managing a changing brand if you can't truly control it? And the truth is, brands can carefully and thoughtfully be managed with great results. And a good brand should improve the impact of a company. And a good brand should improve the impact of a company of marketing in marketing, and as a result, increase the revenue of that company. And so that begs the question, right? How can a good brand improve marketing? So we've established that any actions taken by a company or its employees have potential to improve a brand, the perception of a company, and a good brand can improve the impact of marketing. But how does this work? So in short, a brand must build trust with people. It's not easy to build trust. And in many cases, this simply comes down to consistently delivering quality product or providing good services year after year, sometimes decade after decade. Trust is built on the relevance of a company's visual presentation. For example, if a brand's visual identity looks old or dated, it gives the impression that the company is out of touch and they can't deliver on what's needed in a modern marketplace. Other times it's the way a company writes about itself. If it seems too difficult to read or not approachable enough, this can negatively impact trust also. But if there's trust or fondness for a company, their marketing is more likely to be read, more likely to be acted upon, which makes it more successful and more likely to lead to sales of a product or service. So with that, why did we rebrand instantiations? We know that brands constantly evolve over time, and it's the jobs of marketers, developers, and everyone on the team to help steer a brand towards a specific goal while managing those changes. But when the changes to a brand happen too quickly or are large enough that a brand no longer accurately reflects who or what the company is or does, then a rebranding is necessary at that point. Even though a company can't completely control the perception of brand, like we talked about, they can certainly influence it. In Seth's presentation, you heard about our latest advancements and expansion. And simply put, we needed to rebrand instantiations to help better reflect those changes because our current brand just wasn't keeping up. Instantiations we've built trust by consistently delivering on the quality of our software and our services, but the other aspects of our brand, like our visual identity and our messaging, just weren't where they needed to be. To use some metaphors to kind of describe what was happening, if our brand was a person and the visual brand, the clothing they wear, then they were wearing clothing from 20 years ago while working for some high fashion industry position. It just didn't work. And if our marketing messaging was our voice, we were speaking with words that made it unclear about who we were today and what we're doing today and what makes us different from the instantiations of the past. So in 2020, to solve these issues, we started the process of this rebrand to address these things. And by March 1st, 2021, we had relaunched the brand and featuring a new website and VAST platform 2021. So we've updated a lot as part of this rebrand. And from our perspective, it's been quite successful. We created a new logo, a new website. We've also updated the text about instantiations in VAST on all our various materials. Additionally, we created a completely new website, and we've even renamed VA Smalltalk to VAST Platform, all for the purpose of most accurately representing who we are and what we're currently doing. All that said, the visual identity tends to be the most interesting and fun to look at, so we'll focus on that. And with that, let's start at the beginning of instantiations. So this is a bit of a walk through history, and we're going to start with the logo from 1988. So this was the inaugural logo of instantiations. It's kind of been lost to time a little bit. We've only found an instance of this logo in a old photo from a trade show in 1988, as well as on the side of a coffee cup. So it does exist. It is out there, but it is hard to find. So this might be the first time you've ever seen this logo. And after this logo basically ran its course, we went to this next logo. It was about 1999, 2000 timeframe, and that went through about 2010. And you can see that this logo starts to look a little bit more familiar what you're used to seeing in some of the instantiations logos. You got a similar font treatment to what we've used before. You've got this red swoosh that's had its debut. You have these circles, and similar to our, kind of, I guess, going along with our involvement with Eclipse, there's a subtle homage to Eclipse with this little icon here with starting our Java lines of business and things like that. But then as of 2010, as Seth discussed in the brief company history, we went back to fully Smalltalk again after having that Java Smalltalk joint product situation. And this is the logo that you've probably mostly seen up until this year. And that is, again, doubling down on Smalltalk. We got, again, the swoosh, the font that we're used to seeing, but there's the Smalltalk iconographic balloon there. So again, Smalltalk focused company. And then as of 2019 through what will be the new logo, we just did a cleanup on the current logo. We put it in vector format, made it able to scale up and down infinitely, enhance the colors, remove drop shadows, things like that, just to make it a little bit more clear, more modern, but still essentially the same logo, because we didn't want to change it until we really knew what we wanted to change it to. Now, this is the latest logo as of March 1st of this year, like we talked about. And the overall approach is simplification. So our previous logo objectively had too many elements, too many colors. We tended to dominate whatever page it was on due to the complex balloon, the red swoosh, the large amount of letters and colors. So overall, we streamlined it. We made things simpler. We used a simplified font choice, a little bit of a lighter font choice, and the icon itself was a little bit lighter too. And that was just so we didn't overly dominate whatever page it was on. But it's not the most important thing on the page. We're kind of leaving that to the content, the messaging that we're trying to put out. And as I've already kind of mentioned the icon, but I'm guessing everybody's eyes were probably almost immediately drawn to that icon. So let's talk about it. In short, the icon with our new logo is a simplified and abstracted hot air balloon. Like the logo that came before it, we wanted to maintain our connection to VAST and Smalltalk, but this time do it in a way that felt like it had evolved, much like VAST and instantiations has been evolving and progressing for years. The three rings that form the abstract balloon represent the three incarnations of instantiations over the past 30 years, so the three distinct business entities of instantiations as they existed. And they all overlap to represent the continuity of company founders and employees throughout these different phases of our company history. And to be honest, without their efforts, instantiations wouldn't be where it is today. And this aspect of the logo is a tribute to those accomplishments of our staff. So with that, I'm going to show our logos and our marketing materials kind of in context, as a group, so you can kind of see visually how things have progressed over time. So this is what we've dubbed Brand 1.0, and that's what instantiations had for a very long time. And it's kind of a collection of a couple different logos, and this is the instantiations that I was introduced to when I started. And it successfully carried our company through many years of groundbreaking developments with Smalltalk and Java, although we're showing exclusively Smalltalk on this slide. But once 2019 rolled around, it needed a refresh. It wasn't showing the company we were. It wasn't showing the company we were then as much as it was showing the company that we were almost 20 years ago, at least 10 years ago. So it needed a visual unification, some cleanup, and some usage of some modern design methodologies. So that's where we went to Brand 1.5, and I'm sure you all have seen this as well. And this was basically the shortest lived of our visual identities, but it was really only meant to be a bridge to the full departure from the old brand, a bridge to Brand 2.0 that I'll be showing in a second. And as part of that 1.5 bridge, we cleaned up our logo, as I mentioned earlier, to make it sharper and more easily rendered at all sizes. But it's still essentially the same logo. We reskinned the website completely. Although it's still fundamentally the same website, we did do some copy changes, some text changes too. But we also adopted more modern usage of things like multi-resolution program icons. If you've noticed from 9.2 onward, you can scale the program icon up and down, and a different file is pulled for each type of icon, just so it looks better. But truth be told, we didn't spend a huge amount of time fine-tuning brand 1.5 because we knew it was temporary. We knew it was just laying the groundwork for what was coming in brand 2.0. And this is brand 2.0. And this launched with VAST 2021 and our website on March 1st of 2021, as I referenced before. Although we did start to roll this out about a week or so prior to March 1st. So you might have seen the blue sphere renders and some new brand styling. And that was really just to kind of prepare for the launch of VAST 2021. So we kind of launched it without the logo at first, just to kind of put our foot in the water slightly. And this new visual identity features completely new logo, completely new color palette, defined fonts, icons, design elements like the tilted stripe. You can see it in either gray or this orangish red color, and illustrations like the 3D renders. And all these elements and rules governing their usage, all these elements and the rules governing their usage come together to form a visual system, which is part of a broader document called a brand guideline. And it really outlines the rules for font sizes and font weights, color choices, appropriate spacing and sizing, and which illustrations to use with what colors and so forth. The rules exist to keep our brand consistent across all mediums and channels. Again, consistency will help build things like trust that we've talked about before with brands. So as you may have guessed, the process to create this brand was quite intentional and formalized with established processes and best practices. And to be clear, not every company creates a brand like this, but every company that wants their brand to last, look professional, and be repeatable across all their materials certainly does. Because without it, it would be extremely difficult. Now, to be clear, having all these rules and guidelines doesn't mean that a brand is set in stone and can never change. As we've discussed, a brand is always evolving, and the visual identity must evolve with it. What it does mean, though, is that changes and updates are managed carefully and not done quickly or carelessly without thought to how it could interact with other elements in the visual system. In fact, it's important to have some level of version control, like you would in software, in place for a visual system to manage changes when they inevitably occur. So yeah, I enjoy talking about our new visual brand. I'm a visual designer at heart, but ultimately, I hope I've demystified brands and marketing a little bit today. And I hope I've clarified how a good brand can influence a company's ability to successfully market itself. Admittedly, this is a brief intro to marketing and branding, but I hope you'll be able to pull some useful insights from it. And I'll leave you with something I mentioned to the instantiations team when I was first hired, and that is, like it or not, we're all marketers to some extent because we all influence a brand. So even if you're a developer, you're right there with me as a marketer. And with that, thank you for attending today. And if you have any questions about our brand's new visual identity, the approach we took to rebrand instantiations, or just something else, I'm opening up the Q&A session now and we can talk about it.
Hi, Greg. This is Anita.
Hi.
I have a question. So I think obviously simplifying the logo makes it easier to work and gives better user experiences for every kind of device and everything like that. But also it really stranded away from the Smalltalk logo. So is that also a conscious decision to get away from that? Or do you think it's beneficial to stop being so, joined with the Smalltalk's logo?
Well, I think Smalltalk, as Seth discussed, and I think we're all in agreement in instantiations, Smalltalk is kind of always a part of instantiations. Now, sometimes, with the balloon specifically on our previous logo, it was hard to make that work in a lot of contexts, but we still wanted to kind of keep parts of the balloon with us, keep parts of Smalltalk with us, even in the visual brand. So yeah, we have pulled back a little bit on showing the balloon, but on the other hand, it's still there. And, some of the considerations for that are design wise. And, and ultimately the balloon icon as it was just wasn't, going to work in the context, in my opinion, of a new brand. But Small talk and the imagery of that balloon is, again, always going to be kind of a part of our brand. So it's just being put in a slightly different format than what we're used to seeing, essentially. Good question. Any more questions?
Yes, here in the chat we have a question. Someone's asking if have you measured the impact of your new rebranding?
We have measured the impact. So far, the results have been positive. We have empirical data that we're not going to share, but I think everything that we've seen says it's been a positive impact. We've anecdotally, from stories from people, heard that they like the new brand, and I think from that standpoint, it's been a success.
I have a question. So all this rebranding and visual modernization of the messaging instantiations is sending now. Have all of these have an influence on the product itself? For instance, I don't know, the browsers, the colors of the windows, the icons, etc., or you have not reached that point yet, or have plans for that?
So, I think, well, first of all, what we have done, the new branding, as you've seen it on these slides, has appeared within VAST Platform 2021 on the form of splash screens and the program icon. There's also a banner in the environments area as well that kind of reflects this new branding. Now, as far as the overall GUI, we haven't made any major updates on that front, although it's something that we're looking into. All right, good question. Anything else?
We don't have more questions here in the chat, so if anyone wants to unmute and ask. Oh, okay. There's a question and someone is asking if they can borrow the version 1.5 of the balloon because he really liked it.
Well, let's do this. Julian, email me with my contact info on the screen and we'll talk about it. How about that? Any other questions?
I have one more. So
yeah.
How do you sense or realize that you have to change the visual aspect of icons and fonts, colors, etc.? I mean, once you are, usually when we are used to something, we think it's nice, it's pretty, but so it's hard for us human beings to see with new eyes something we already know. So how do you know when you have to change again?
That's a really good question. So I think the best way to answer that is, some of it's a bit of soul searching and asking yourself, like, who you are as a company and what do you represent as a company? What are your goals? Who are your competitors? Who do you want your customers to be? And many times the answers to these questions can come back as, well, our competitors are these people, and we feel like they really well represent themselves. And then you start to look at yourself and you realize, well, do we represent ourselves as in that way? And sometimes it's not even necessarily looking at your competitors. You can look at just other sites websites, other companies you respect, and see what they're doing with their businesses. And it really comes down to just self-evaluation and being willing to self-evaluate and say, is this where we want to be? And if it's not, start thinking about how you get to the next spot. Now, me specifically coming into instantiations, I have a background in design and creative direction already. So I knew coming into instantiation specifically that the brand necessarily wasn't where it should be or where it needed to be. And I didn't have 10 years of, seeing the brand to realize that, or to basically, get used to it and feel like we should keep with it. So in some ways, it's good to sometimes get an outside opinion as well, get an objective third party. If, you're worried that you can't be objective, then ask somebody you know and trust that has a good opinion on matters. And they can sometimes help out too. Next question.
Yes, I have one more question. Yeah. Was it hard to convince everyone in the company, like developers and other people, that this was like a positive change and something that had to be done?
I think generally, I can't speak for all the developers in the company. However, it seemed to me that everybody realized that, as we started to make small changes behind the scenes and we started to make small changes to the brand that weren't public, they said, oh, wow, that looks really nice. Maybe we can go do some more of that. So, it was kind of an evolution behind the scenes too of, seeing what people were comfortable with and trying to essentially, find that special mixture of visual elements and other things in the brand, like how we write about ourselves. And it was trying to basically find that and put it all together. Now, did I have to convince the team that we needed to make a change? Honestly, not too much. I think everybody kind of felt like, look, we're doing new stuff. Let's make a change. But it does help when you're doing, a visual system creation, when you're doing a rebrand, when you're writing differently, is that none of it's really arbitrary. None of it's really just done off the cuff. There's a lot of processes in marketing and design that really help you get to the core of what you should be doing and what, resonates with your company and things like that. So it's not quite a process of throwing a dart at a wall and seeing where it sticks and that's your new logo. There's a lot of design iteration and discussion and a lot of things that kind of go into bringing a team all to basically being okay with the brand. And I think essentially from my perspective, I think putting this brand together was a big team effort. And I really appreciate the help from my team to do it. And it was a great collaborative kind of effort. Any more questions?
Here's a question from my side. You have shown the visual aspects of the brand. But I worked also on rebranding a few years back in rebranding many companies, and worked with some team that also cared on the sound side and audio side. For instance, that you have the famous song or the famous let's say audio part in Intel advertising. Have you thought about having a specific sound? Small sound kind of thing for your brand, for instantiations?
So that's a good question. So animation, specifically with some kind of logo animation coming on a screen or some kind of intro animation we can put on videos that we post online. That's, as you kind of alluded with Intel, that's a great place where you can have, that special mnemonic. I think they usually call it a mnemonic. And that special mnemonic can, that in and of itself can be a branding element. And while I've thought about that, it hasn't risen to the top of the priority list for the company. But it's definitely something that's on the table. And I've worked on projects before at other organizations that have that kind of logo animation element with that specific mnemonic. And it can be a really cool thing to have. So thank you for bringing it up. But to answer your question, not yet, but probably in the future.